So with our handsome Mr. A, ready, Allston? So we're going to warm up with some engagement on the handler. So if, let's say, for example, you're finding he's not as attentive, I would recommend to gauge the environment. Is it very distracting? Has it been a place where he's practiced in the past? If there's a lot of novelty and then you're trying to also work new skills, it may not go as fluid as you were hoping. So I know dealing with, of course, teenage dogs as well, since their brain and body are still under construction, some of the times that's also what might be getting in the way of, let's say, for example, their attention span or their retention. So for Mr. Handsome, I'm just warming up with a couple little find its with orientation back to me. You might even warm up with, again, some of the positive interrupter. So that could be, again, that little kiss noise. I'm also making sure to feed him for anything good I'd like to have happen again. So this gorgeous sitting or engagement with me would be something I would want to capture and reinforce. So again, we're going to throw out a couple little find its. Allston, come. Warm up with a little bit with some recall. Nice. So if you're finding he's not as responsive to your recalls in and around the home, nice job, sir. Start off in a bubble where it is more attainable. So if that's in the home, I know you were mentioning he was very restless one of his other days, and you were having a hard time getting him to settle down. There could be moments where I think with like the cooler weather, sometimes they get a little bit more energy. You had mentioned that you had been like working at home and doing a few things where you were more stationary. So he was, again, maybe a little bit more rambunctious. I would always recommend have things on hand to work a little bit with, for example, having him enjoy a chew item or some sort of lick item. If, again, you can't always necessarily work with him every time. Obviously, I know we've dived into making sure the dogs have enough rest, so getting enough sleep. If a lot of times he's wondering where is everybody going or what are we up to, a lot of times that's a lot of interrupted rest and not deep sleep or good sleep periods. So right here we'll go again. Allston, come. Nice job, sir. We do have some potentials for an electrician poking in because there's some of my lights that have been broken for a little bit and they were going to maybe potentially repair them. So we'll see. I kind of hear some talking, but it could just be my neighbors. So Allston, come. Nice, good check-in. Ready? Find it. So, but if we do get interrupted, we'll take a little breather. I'll just get them situated and we'll come right back to working with Mr. A. So with these lovely find its, if he's not doing as well with recalls from the environment, I'd recommend to feed a lot of these moments where he comes into your space in and around the inside of the home. Then from there, you might warm up with a little bit, ready? Alston's like, I like the find its best. When he's up and moving, you might then start moving within the home front. And then when he reorients back to you, feed him for that lovely bouncing back to you from the environment or the distractions. If you don't have a fenced in yard or your yard is large or whatever the situation might be, you may want to start him off on a longer lead. So remember, the long training leashes can be a great way to add extra movement from his end. Because a lot of times being on a 6-foot lead, sometimes we move so slow that a lot of times they're trying to see the world through their senses. And we tend to want to have them hone in on us and work that lovely loose leash walking or like heel position. I would recommend to build into that as you've had some exploration. So it's nice to have kind of like an on-off switch to like focus on you and be nearby, and then more off-duty, still no pulling on your arm or your shoulder and no jostling him either. But the long line can allow for your babe to move more freely and more at his gait while also still going at your rate at the other end. So ready? So maybe we'll work a little bit with our sit. We'll try a bit with those weights. So again, we'll have him wait. He's like, oh, got stuck in his jowl. And then right here, we'll go Allston, come. He's like, my brain's slightly melted. There we go, good job. If he's ever a little hesitant, like let's say maybe sitting and waiting is difficult for him or he doesn't quite know how to hold back, you could, again, do some find its with recall like we did just a little bit earlier. So right here, I'm going to tell him to wait. We're going to give him a couple of seconds. If he's been doing really well with his duration, I might add in, like, for example, some of this movement and then go Allston, come. Nice. Eventually, remember that as we're practicing with any of these skills, we will want to fade out that lure. So what I mean by that is if you always have the food presented first, get the behavior, and then feed, he's going to think the only option is see the food presented or smell it technically, and then ask the question. So go ahead and do the skill and then be fed for that response. So we want to, as he becomes more fluid, let's say we're looking for a stand position, our hand could be empty. We'd go into a stand, yes, and we'd feed right after. So he's still getting the paycheck for the effort and for the work that he's doing, but it wasn't the food that made it happen in the first place. So when we're doing that luring, the food is typically presented first. We're showing the pup how to follow the food. Oh, ready? Find it. Dropped one. So we're having the puppy follow the food hand into the position or into that behavior we were looking for. As he gets more comfortable with a certain skill, you want to be able to say the cue first. So you might go stand and then offer the hand signal and then feed. So if he's ever a little bit uncertain, you can always break it down into smaller steps. So maybe in the beginning for a down position, you did tend to lure all the way to the floor. You may find that, let's say, for example, for the down, if he's using the food to lower to the ground, perfectly okay to start there, but then try to, again, transition where the food is no longer in the hand and you might feed from the other side. So we could, again, go down. And he's like, my brain melted slightly. So he's like, would you like a high five? He's very good with his feet. Ready? Down. Yes, so right there. So if he doesn't get the concept, don't keep repeating yourself. So I might ask once or maybe try to help him a little bit more. If he really needs a little bit more of a stepping stone, you could do, like, let's say every down you do 2 or 3 that are luring and then 2 that are without the food in the hand and feed right after. And then eventually you start to fade out the needing of presenting the food first. Because again, down the road, you'd be able to do intermittent reinforcement or rotate through different types of reinforcements. So that way you can still reinforce your handsome guy for all his hard efforts. Because remember, if you were working really hard at your job and your boss is doing an amazing job giving you great paychecks for all of the efforts you're doing for your job, in that situation, if all of a sudden they started to not pay you for your hard efforts or maybe sporadically gave you a paycheck, from our perspective, that would start to equal very few responses from our end. With dogs, thankfully, as a behavior becomes more of a habit, you can reinforce intermittently, but there's certain skills that I feed for all the time. So for example, recall, I always feed for when the dog comes to me, or if they're more toy motivated, I feed technically with play. So they're getting that reinforcement. So we're gonna do a few more little weights, have them hold back for a few moments, and then see if we can practice a little bit. Ready? Allston, come. Yes, nice job. If in the beginning you're always, again, calling your puppy while looking a certain way, perfectly fine to start somewhere, sit. Then we tell him to wait. But if, let's say, I always face him when I call him, I might sometimes face away from him or sideways. Allston, come. Yes. And see if you can also fade out that hand dropping. So a lot of times in the beginning, since your puppies are immensely visual learners, they are the whole time reading you and the room, if that makes sense, where they're seeing what's been happening, what's been working, what's been overwhelming, what's been a little spooky, or what gives them an out. So if, let's say, for example, barking out the window gives him something to do and makes him feel like that spooky thing now has gone away, that's going to be reinforcing and he's going to do it again. So remember, dogs are not out to get us or dupe us or take over the world, but they are, for example, trying to feel safe or comfortable within our human world. So right here, Allston, come. Yes, nice job. So right there, just a nice little recall from the distraction of the environment. We might set him up again in a little sitting position. Then I might tell him to wait. And then I might try again, calling from, let's say, a different visual from my end. Allston, come. Nice. So sometimes it could be that you're standing forward facing him. Sometimes your back end might be facing him. Maybe you call him around a corner where you're out of range visibly. Other times you might even do it where, let's say, for example, you could also be doing some of these lovely recalls with multiple family members. So you could rock it where maybe he's in the home or in the yard or a safe bubble, and you could have multiple family members calling his name and telling him to come one at a time. So if, let's say, you have some helpers, just make sure that if they're littles, if they don't love having the pup take the food from their hands directly, you could have them get called and then feed the floor. So, for a lot of folks that either just don't love this, the saliva, or they don't, for example, let's say the pup could be a little excited or a little overwhelmed, they might take their food a little harder. So feeding the floor is a way to still reinforce the dog for coming at you and into your bubble, but you don't have to feed them directly. We do want to feed flat palm if your pup is overexcited or a little overwhelmed, so they're not eating your fingertips at the same time. So if you're doing fingers like this, he will more than likely get your fingers by mistake, not knowing where you and the food start or end. So flat palm can be very helpful to avoid the fingers getting chomped while either he's a little flustered or doesn't quite know what to do. So we'll do another little find it. Nice. Allston, come. Beautiful. So he's really doing a gorgeous job. So just remember in the household, maybe there's moments where you are just not able to work with him, and that's understandable, but give him an outlet that might be dog-centric for him. So gnawing on something new, working a puzzle toy, maybe doing a little bit of the flirt pole or some exploration with sniffy walks in the yard before you have to do that other thing in the home or, without him involved. So, but we'll give Mr. A a little breather. He's doing a really nice job with some of these waits and recalls, and then also with some of these little, again, transitioning from the lure, always being present, to now after the fact, he gets the paycheck. So maybe we'll do another little stand. Yes, and then feed for that. And maybe we'll do another little, ready? We'll do a little puppy push-up. We'll do a sit. Yes, nice job. And then we'll try for a gorgeous down. He's like, would you like saliva? Ready? Yeah, that's very good. He's like all the way. So if he tends to jump the gun and kind of quickly pop out of a position, just make sure that you're still feeding for each one as he gets it. If we tend to do, let's say, sits, downs, and stands or ups, which is just to get up onto all 4 feet like he's right now, is what we tend to do by mistake is we ask for the sit, we don't feed it, we ask for the down, we might feed that one, or we don't feed for either of those two and ask for the stand. And what can happen is your pups can start to clump all of those things together and not know what each one individually might be and how to offer them. So make sure that when you're practicing, you may ask for this gorgeous sit position, feed for it if you asked for it, and then ask for maybe the down or the stand position after the fact. So we might go again, stand, and then yes to feed. And then from here, we could try for a lovely down. Yes. And eventually, if he's not quite as comfortable on this material, some of the babes are a little bit flustered with different textures. So they either get a little overwhelmed doing practice on slippery floors. They maybe don't like the coldness of the floor. He's like, nope, now he's getting comfortable. It could be that he's so eager that he quickly jumps out of a position. So if you're finding he's quickly transitioning from one thing to another and you really wanted him to hold a position, feed several reps while he's in that spot. So that can build value in being stuck. So again, we're going to feed a few little reps just for this really pretty down, and then we'll go ahead and give him a little break like I had mentioned prior. Nice. But Mr. A is doing a really pretty job. So remember, building some of this value by adding extra deposits will create a behavior that happens much more readily without having to, again, make it so challenging for him down the road. Nice. So I'm going to give him a little break from this exercise and we'll work a few more skills with Mr. A, but that was a really good job with those recalls.